Hi, I'm Bob,
And I'm Sherry.
and this is Mostly Politics with Bob and Sherry.
Today we have the pleasure to interview State Representative Mr. Robert Mercuri, who represents Pennsylvania District 28. So welcome.
Thank you, Bob and Sherry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Rob, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for office?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, it's been about 2 years now that I've been in my first term here as an elected representative in District 28, which is in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. Wonderful town, and I was born and raised in this area, just a stone's throw from the area that I represent in West Deer Township. And my wife as well went to Highlands High School. I went to Deer Lakes, and it's really the privilege of a lifetime to be able to represent the 71,000 people of my district. And the reason that I ran really started when I joined the military. I had an interest in serving the country, and I raised my hand to defend the United States. And I was deployed overseas after graduating from West Point. And I got to see how great our country is from another country, from the perspective of a country that was war-torn in Iraq. I did 2 tours over in Iraq and came back with just an incredible amount of perspective and desire to continue to serve. But first, my wife and I wanted to raise our family, and I wanted to get a private sector job. We opened a small business as well in our community of Wexford, pack and ship store, and this was a way for me to continue to serve and really to celebrate and cherish the fabric of our community by hopefully making it a little bit better and representing our area. So the good people of District 28 chose to send me to Harrisburg, and I've been working hard ever since.
Talk about working hard. We want to talk about the 3 bills you actually co-sponsored. You mentioned that you had a small business, and of course we know what happened to small business during COVID. And one of the bills you sponsored was HB 55, which limits the governor emergency declaration power. Can you talk about that?
Yes, yeah. So I actually, it's interesting. I joined the military, and then 9/11 happened. I decided to get out into the private sector, and the crash of 2008 and 2009 happened. And I decided to enter politics, and the COVID-19 pandemic happened. And so for whatever reason, I seem to align myself to whatever kind of crisis the country's going through. And it's just the way that the good Lord has chosen to direct my steps. But, small businesses went through an incredibly difficult time, during the pandemic. And it wasn't directly a result of the pandemic, but it was because of the reaction to the health crisis by our government. And in particular, by Governor Wolf, who decided to arbitrarily shut down almost the entire economy. There was a lot of picking and choosing, and there was a lot of controversy over the winners and losers in what he chose. But most small businesses were nearly wiped out during the COVID-19 crisis. And we felt very strongly as a legislature that we needed to curtail what was really unlimited authority in the governor's office to declare a perpetual state of emergency. And if you remember, during that crisis, that's exactly what we had. It was one crisis declaration after another, with sweeping powers to dictate the details of our everyday lives, the well-being of our citizens, and the livelihood of our businesses. And so we decided that it was appropriate to give the power back to the people that we were elected to serve. And so we came up with a constitutional amendment that we proposed. We passed in the legislature. I co-sponsored it. And then we put it to a vote in the election in 2021. And it passed overwhelmingly. And what the measure stated was that any governor who wanted to declare a state of emergency would need to get renewal authority from the elected representatives after 21 days. And the reason that I think that's a common sense measure is that it does balance the power of the executive with the elected legislature. And that way we, as the legislature, can keep the governor honest, and we can also give the feedback that we receive from our constituents to his administration. And so that's what we immediately did after the good citizens of Pennsylvania gave us that authority. We told the governor that it was time to end a perpetual state of emergency. And sure enough, we got back to normal and got back to work, and the economy roared back to life. So that was the intent of that House bill, and I think it was a good success.
And so just to be clear, that means that the governor would have to get approval from the legislature every 21 days
Yes.
for something like a COVID.
That's right. That's right. And the opponents said, well, hey, what if the legislature can't convene? What if there's an emergency that is so terrible that it needs to be indefinite and things like that? And we just think that while those scenarios may exist, we think there are workarounds for those scenarios. There's remote voting that we've had. What we've seen over time, and I think what the founders saw too, was that the likelihood of an executive abusing his authority is greater than the likelihood of some, narrow or very unlikely event happening that we would need to reserve this special power for the executive. So we chose to give the power back to the people, and that's what we did.
Let's talk about the second bill you co-sponsored. Clearly for you, besides small business, family values and education is very important to you as well. And you listed that on your website. And one of the bills you co-sponsored was that's HB 1332, requires all school district post curriculum online. And that actually was passed October 6, 2021. So I'm not sure how many people know about this. So if you can tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, Sherry, good question. And I really like that bill. And there are others like it that really change this balance of influence in our schools back towards parental oversight. And I think one of the byproducts of the COVID-19 pandemic was also that parents across the United States were much more involved and ingrained in the day-to-day activities of their students who are in school. And sometimes, they were surprised to learn of the curriculum that was being followed, or sometimes they were excited by it. And our hardworking teachers and administrators in both public and private schools do great things every day. They're heroes in our society. And there's nothing more important than the education of our young people. But at the same time, we have heard from numerous constituents that they are concerned with some of the content in curriculum items that have been shared with students that may or may not be appropriate, depending on the values of the parents at home. And so all this bill would do is that it would require every school district to post curriculum online so that every parent or guardian can have a look at the curriculum content. And it's good accountability, really, for teachers and for curriculum writers and for administrators, certainly, to make sure that the curriculum that is being introduced into the schools is appropriate for the ages that are being taught and the grade levels being taught, and also that it has broad appeal and that it's not controversial or political content. And in our day and time, it's important that the content being presented be nonpartisan and that it would be acceptable to a majority of parents. And sometimes parents may just feel that because of the specific type of education that is being presented, and this may not always be the case, or even in a majority of cases, but that they might choose to pull their student into a private school setting or a homeschool setting, and that should be okay. So this is really just an exchange of information so that parents are better equipped to prepare their students for life.
And I understand that bill passed both the House and the Senate, but was vetoed by the governor?
Yes, it was vetoed by the governor. And, it's really a shame because I think the way that the governor talked about it was as censorship and talked about it in terms of putting more onerous requirements on teachers and administrators, which is, I think, not the case, not the intent of the bill, and what we think would not be the impact. The impact would simply be greater transparency, and I think it was really a political veto that he wanted to provide a win for, his supporters in the public sector unions.
Let's talk about the third bill, because I don't think a lot of people in Pennsylvania even heard about this third bill. It was actually passed in the House. Is H.R. 187, which is establish a resolution using the governor of New York to urging the governors of New York and New Jersey and anti-pipeline policies that block Pennsylvania natural gas New England market.
Right.
Can you tell us a little about that? And I'm just thinking, how much jobs could we create if they didn't do that?
Yes. Yeah, it's all about jobs, Sherry. That's exactly right. And what we want to do in Pennsylvania is we want to bring back a competitive economic environment where there's a plethora of good paying, family sustaining jobs across the Commonwealth. And one of Pennsylvania's historical best job creators is our energy industry. If you think about Andrew Carnegie in the steel industry, if you think about the Drake oil well in the 1800s, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, and the first extraction well was in Oil City in Pennsylvania. And so our heritage as a state is really around the energy industry. And currently, the clean natural gas industry is one of the most promising sectors of our state economy. But unfortunately, what Governor Wolf did was he unilaterally entered into an intrastate compact called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI for short. And what that intrastate compact did was it created a carbon tax regime over the entire energy industry and anything that produces carbon. And while I understand the intent of his edict was to reduce carbon emissions, the impact on a state like Pennsylvania, with as much energy resources as we have, is that we're put at a competitive disadvantage to surrounding states like West Virginia and Ohio, who don't have this greenhouse gas initiative or tax. And it's also an overstepping of his authority as the executive, who, as you know, does not have taxing authority. That's reserved for the legislature. In the other states, New York, New Jersey, as you mentioned, Sherry, and others that were a part of this interstate compact, they had legislative approval to enter that compact. And so it's more legitimate in those states. In our state in Pennsylvania, we were entered into it at the edict of the governor. And in fact, we in the legislature by a majority did not approve of that action for the reasons that I mentioned, that it does put us at a competitive disadvantage to our surrounding states. And it really hampered job growth right heading into and out of the pandemic. And you may remember in 2021, we got some bad news that U.S. Steel decided to pull out of the city of Pittsburgh, a major multi-billion-dollar investment that was planned for Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas that would have created thousands of jobs, construction jobs, and then going forward, employment. And they decided to go to a different state that was not part of this intrastate compact. So we literally, by entering into this compact, chased thousands of jobs out of Pennsylvania. And I would say not enough people know about the way that transpired, that it was entered into unilaterally by Governor Wolf. And by doing that, he sent a message to the steel industry, the coal industry, the natural gas industry, that Pennsylvania was closed for business. And again, this is one of our signature and most productive sectors of the economy. So it was a real shame that he did it, and it was very damaging to our economy. So we decided as a legislature we needed to take action, and we passed the resolution that you mentioned to make it very, very clear that the legislature did not approve of this intrastate compact. and then we sent it to court. And so it was our government working for us, and we basically said, hey, Governor Wolf does not have the authority that he claims to have, which is basically, entering into a tax program that damages the energy industry. The legislature does not approve of it, and we want the court to decide. And they recently did decide that we were on the right side of the law, and so we are no longer a part of this RGGI program. Now, a lot of the damage was already done by that point, and it'll take us a while to recover, but at least we're no longer a part of that carbon tax program.
Wow.
So as a lifelong Pittsburgher, it kind of struck me when you said chased U.S. Steel away,
Yes.
because they've been a fixture in Pittsburgh for my whole life. Tallest building in the city, steel building. The Steelers logo
Exactly
was
right.
licensed to them from United States Steel.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, we're really
culturally, they're really ingrained in our city.
That's exactly right, Bob. And really, we were modeling ourselves. Governor Wolf wanted to model Pennsylvania after the states of New York and New Jersey by taking this action. And it really was a forsaking of our steel town values by kicking U.S. Steel out of town and chasing those jobs with it. So I'm glad to report that the courts did side with us. Now what we need to do is elect a Republican governor or an energy-friendly governor who's not only willing to keep us out of that RGGI compact, but also build new pipelines, double down on clean natural gas, and get our economy moving again.
So are these the big issues that people in your district are concerned with? Economy, energy, education, or are there others?
Yes. Yeah, I would say the one that I would add to that, so I think it is energy and responsible energy expansion, right? So it's expanding our use of clean natural gas and other fossil fuels, but it's also innovating our way to the future energy economy. So it doesn't mean that we accept our carbon footprint today. I recognize that we need to get cleaner, and we need to be good stewards of the environment. But we can't just with a pen, like California is doing, decide that there'll be no more gas-powered vehicles by a certain year. We have to build that technology first, or we're going to end up seeing a decline in our economy, and we're going to see damage to the value that we have in the United States. So we need to innovate our way, and we can do that. There's no question in my mind that we can innovate the future of the energy economy. So we need to do that. We need to do it responsibly, but we can't kill our oil and natural gas resources. We also need to be fiscally responsible. We hear a lot about that. We are spending our way to oblivion in the United States of America. You see these federal policies where we're forgiving student loans. These are loans that young people have taken of their own accord, and they've taken them, with a bank in good faith, underwritten by the federal government or the state government in many cases. And with a stroke of a pen, President Biden is waving away in a very unfair way these student loans. And I'm not a fan of students being underwater in debt, but at the same time, many people make and have made decisions for a long time based on the reality that you got to pay back what you borrow, or you might join the military so that you can work off your debt or earn a GI scholarship. And these are honorable ways to do it. Basically saying it's the government's responsibility to pay my student debt is not American. It's not responsible. And it leads to a decline in our trajectory, right? The overspending, the inflation leads to a decline in our national trajectory. This is the creep of socialism and overspending. This is the decline of value in the economy that Russia experienced when they, went communist, and they couldn't create value in their economy. We've got to recognize that we've created a ton of value in America because of the principle of hard work and capitalism, and we can't stray away from that. I hope we don't. So we hear a lot of that from our constituents, and education is also a big part of it. I think we need more educational choice to make our schools better, to provide more opportunity for everybody. And then I think lastly, and I'll end with this, is efficient, effective government. And we talked at the top of the show about holding Governor Wolf accountable for his kind of egregious overreaches. And there's a lot of other bureaucratic overreach that happens in Harrisburg and in Pennsylvania, and we see it at the federal level too. But we need to be bold about creating efficient government processes. And unemployment compensation process is one of them. There's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. Think about the Turnpike. Think about PennDOT and some of the waste at the tolling booths where there's uncollected tolls. We can do better, and we need overhaul in those departments. So we hear a lot about that, and we experience a lot of that too as constituents walk into our office with one problem or another that we want to help them get solved. And whether it's licensing for a business or being tied up in court, there's a lot of state bureaucracy processes that we need to modernize so that we can once again be kind of the model for the world.
So you co-sponsored these bills as a freshman legislator. How did you find yourself in some of a leadership position when you just got elected, went into office, and then was brave enough to co-sponsor bills, and that could be controversial?
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for saying that. We've had a lot of success in the first term. One of the things that I told my staff when I first got elected was that we have 2 years, and we don't know if we'll have any more than that. We're not guaranteed any more than that, so we've got to go earn it. So that we can be reelected, and that's what we did. We worked hard. We identified our priorities, and then we found issues that we cared about, and collaborated both across the aisle and with other Republican legislators to get things done. So I'll give credit to our staff and our hardworking constituents who bring a lot of these ideas our way.
So when you co-sponsor a bill, does that mean you're one of the people who drafted and initiated it?
Yeah, so not all the time, but those three issues that we talked about were near and dear to my priorities, and I knew right away that they were issues that I wanted to work on and collaborate with. And it's a process, right? So you identify an issue that you care about, you do research on it, you develop a draft bill, or you find a colleague who's developed a draft bill that you'd like to support, and you either sponsor or co-sponsor to put your name behind it. And then you've got to get the leadership team to support your concept. And then you've got to kind of broaden your campaign and win the approval of your colleagues. And then it goes to a vote on the House floor. And then we've got our sister chamber in the Senate, and you've got to convince them as well. And then you've got to convince the governor to sign it. So any number of ways that those ideas can be thrown off. But it is a good process. I mentioned, too, at the top that I gained a lot of respect and context for our system when I was overseas. And it is the best system in the world. And I still really appreciate everything that we've been given in the United States, the opportunities that we have, the natural resources we have, the freedoms that we enjoy. And I want to do my part to protect those freedoms and make sure that my kids and your kids all get to enjoy those same freedoms.
Do you have a challenger in the general election?
We do have a challenger in the general election, and it was a write-in candidate who is running their campaign. But we really are just staying focused on all of the things that we know that we can do in this next term. Working both within our party and across the aisle. And we know that we have a ton of work left to do. We've accomplished a lot, but we've got a good deal of work left to do that I'm excited to earn the trust of the voters on November 8th and come back and begin to work hard again to get even more accomplished. We accomplished a lot this last term, 2 great budgets, a constitutional amendment limiting the governor appropriately, and so much more. We stopped the Reggie program. We promoted educational choice, and we've got to follow through on those initiatives and others in this next term as well. So we look forward to doing that.
So you alluded to your faith a little earlier. Can you talk about how you integrate your faith, how that kind of drives you in your policies, your daily life?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that question. You know, my faith is a central part of my life. I was raised in a Christian home, and am proud to be an attendee of our local church. I'm an elder on the board of our local church, and we just see it as part of our daily life is to bring our children up in the values that we believe in, and follow a set of values that are prescribed by our faith, and live those out, and live them out in a way that allows others to see the light of our faith as well and be drawn to that. And I'm really proud to be able to do that. And I actually think that a virtuous society, one that does follow a set of beliefs, is the right kind of society to be able to responsibly enjoy the types of freedoms that we have. And then sometimes if you lose that sense of virtue in a values-based society, that the freedoms you enjoy might have to start to be diminished because of the lack of virtue in a society. And when some folks call for, expanded drug use in society, or more lax law enforcement, that type of thing, I worry about where our society is headed because of the lack of rule of law and the lack of virtue. Can really be a situation where our freedoms and our cherished freedoms start to break down. So my faith is central to that kind of worldview, where I think that our founding fathers were able to put in place this structure where we trust the people to make the right decisions at the ballot box, and to regulate their own lives based on the core values that each of us have. And so again, I think it's important that we continue to celebrate faith, and that's something that we certainly do in our home. So thank you for that question.
You mentioned about you respect the rule of law, and I do see a lot of your voting record. You voted very much for law enforcement, very pro-police.
Yes. Yes.
It seems like the other side votes the opposite.
Yeah, I was just in downtown Pittsburgh today for an economic update, and I mentioned the concern that I have about some safety and security in downtown Pittsburgh and rising crime rates across our state. Philadelphia is dealing with some major lawless issues, and I think, frankly, it stems to the defunding of the police movement that occurred in the last couple of years, and I think the impact has been real on our crime rates, our violent crime rates, and the lawlessness in society. Our police are brave men and women that get up every day and are excited to do their jobs, to enforce our laws, to do it respectfully, and to do it consistently. Do they make mistakes? Sometimes, yes. When I was in the U.S. military and we were overseas, did we make mistakes occasionally as well? Yes. So it's difficult when you're in a situation where your lives at stake and others' lives are at stake as well. You have to be very careful. You have to be highly trained, and mistakes do happen. But that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater and we say all cops are bad. The police officers that serve our area are some of the most honorable men and women that you'll ever meet. And it's important, I think, for societies like ours to celebrate our law enforcement officers and to recognize the hard work that they do. They're putting their lives on the line. And so, yes, I am a big supporter of the police, and anything that I can do to encourage their full funding and their support, I'll do it.
All right. In closing, is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I would just thank you both for having me, and encourage your listeners to make sure that they make a plan to vote on November 8th, either at the polls or through the mail. And they can go to my website or the PA website, pavotes.com, to get their ballot and to make sure they're registered. So participation is important in a democracy, and I would encourage everybody to do it. And thanks again.
All right.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care, guys.